Well, in 2008, the then US Senator Barack Obama spoke to a rapturous audience of 200,000 people in Berlin. 8 years later, President Obama was back in Germany on a visit at the twilight of his two-term presidency. Now, with the countdown on to find his successor, what can Mr. Obama achieve in his final few months? Let's talk more about Mr. Obama's possible legacy. I'm joined by David Tafuri, a former foreign policy advisor for the Obama campaign. He was also an official at the United Nations and the US State Department. Great to have you with us. Now, President Obama is America's first black president, and in his second term, he has secured some pretty huge deals, some significant policy. What do you think will be seen as his greatest achievements?
Well, I think what he has tried to make the centerpiece of his achievements on foreign policy is reaching out to countries that the U.S. had very substantial problems with. That would include principally Cuba and Iran. And that was really the centerpiece of his focus from the beginning. He said, I will talk to any country, I will talk to any leader. He's done new agreements with each country, moved forward on normalizing relationships with each country. And I think he would point to that as having a substantial impact. As well, he's trying to solidify strong alliances with our friends in Europe. And then also he confronts major obstacles in Syria and Iraq and in the greater Middle East in keeping the Middle East stable. But specifically in Syria and Iraq, it's confronting ISIS. That's been a problem for him. It came late in his presidency. He didn't have a plan immediately to take on ISIS. He has 8 or 9 months left in his presidency to show some impact in terms of moving forward and defeating ISIS. He's taken out a lot of the leaders, taken out some of the soldiers using airstrikes, but now he needs to take back their headquarters, which are in Mosul and in Raqqa, Syria.
So Syria and Iraq, definitely two issues for him to focus on. And the migrant crisis obviously continues to be a major problem. Other areas, he promised obviously to close Guantanamo Bay. That hasn't happened. And he wanted to focus on gun control in the US. Not much has changed there. No doubt there'll be a lot of people willing to criticize him. But where else do you think he could have done better?
Well, I think, you've mentioned some of the areas. He certainly could have moved things forward on gun control more, although it's a real hot button issue in the United States. The Republicans are dead set against any more gun laws. So he faces, a lot of difficulty there. I think the relationship with Russia has degraded quite a lot. You see, he was caught flat-footed when Russia moved troops and forces into Syria. And I think Syria is really sort of the biggest problem for President Obama. Although he says he's very happy with his decision not to be more involved in Syria, he viewed it as a quagmire. We have to look at the fact that 300,000 civilian lives have been lost in Syria during his presidency. That's a significant tragedy. And this latest announcement of putting in 250 special forces into Syria may show that he wants to do more in Syria in his last 8 or 9 months.
So you think that will be his main focus, Syria and the fight against ISIS?
I think the fight against ISIS, Syria, keeping Iraq together, keeping the government in Baghdad, which is facing substantial difficulties right now, together, making progress in terms of the operation to take back Mosul in Iraq, and then also trying to prevent the creation of more failed states in the Middle East. Look at Libya, look at Yemen. So those will also be part of the focus for this president. There can't be more states, more failed states at the end of his presidency than there were at the beginning, but it looks like it's trending that way.
And just looking at the current presidential election, he must be a little bit concerned that a Republican candidate could come in and undo his legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be a significant concern. Most of the Republican candidates said that they will rip up the Iran deal on day one of their presidency. That really makes no sense. Even if you were opposed to the Iran deal at the time we entered into it, now we've given Iran some of the things that we were required to give under the agreement. It makes no sense to rip that up, but that's a substantial threat. Someone like Donald Trump has said he's going to do it. He's ignoring the consequences of that. And so he has to worry about that. Cuba as well. Some of the Republican candidates have been, critical of his decision to normalize relations with Cuba before Cuba improved its human rights record. I would also look to the Russia relationship. It's unclear what the Republican candidates will do with respect to Russia. They don't really have a policy, haven't explained, what they can or will do with respect to Russia. But that's a really critical relationship at a critical time right now. We really need to make Russia conform to international law and work with us on some of the biggest obstacles to peace around the world.
Okay, David Tafuri, we appreciate your perspective on all of that. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
You're watching Connect the World. Still to come, the investigation into the death of Prince as fans continue to pay tribute to the music legend. We'll take you to Paisley Park next.